Her mother begged her not to take the job, but Emily laughed it off. 6 years later, those words would prove chillingly prophetic, as 2,500 horrified spectators watched her die in the very waters she loved most. On June 5th, Emily walked into the arena with a smile. The crowd cheered, the music rose, and for a moment, it felt like just another summer show at Ocean World. Families clapped, children waved, and all eyes turned toward the young trainer in the wetsuit. But in the next half hour, every single person in that audience would carry a memory they'd never escape. The horrifying last moment of Emily Cadeaux, eaten alive by the orca she trusted most. Emily was only 24 years old. From the outside, she looked like someone who had found her calling early, someone lucky enough to turn childhood fascination into a career. Friends described her as born in water. She had been that kid who collected seashells, spent hours watching fish in aquariums, and refused to leave the ocean during family vacations. She learned to snorkel as a teenager, and while others struggled with masks and fins, she moved beneath the waves effortlessly, as if the sea itself welcomed her. She talked often about wanting to try mermaid swimming, just for the chance to feel what it was like to glide through the deep the way marine creatures did. To her, water was not just a place, it was freedom. But there was another side to her story, one that didn't show up in glossy brochures or smiling photographs. Her parents had always been uneasy about her obsession with the ocean. Her mother, especially. She used to tell Emily, "The sea takes as much as it gives. Don't go too far." When Emily announced she was joining Ocean World as an intern at 19, her mother tried to talk her out of it. It wasn't just the water she feared, but the idea of her daughter working so closely with predators the size of buses. Emily smiled, reassured her, and pressed on. For her, it was never about risk. It was about love. Looking back now, her mother's unease feels almost prophetic, a mother's instinct she couldn't silence. Ocean World itself was a glittering empire of entertainment. Since the late 80s, it has become one of the top attractions in the region, drawing more than 1 million visitors every year. Tickets averaged $60 to $70, and when you added food, merchandise, and VIP packages, families could spend hundreds in a single afternoon. Behind every performance was a business machine, pulling in tens of millions annually. The shows were marketed as safe, wholesome fun, a chance for children to get close to creatures of the sea. But behind the applause and the smiles, there were cracks in the foundation. There were several hidden warnings, reports highlighting potential danger buried deep, and a truth the public wasn't meant to see. At the center of Emily's story was Vesper, an 11,000-pound bull orca. To the audience, he was majestic, powerful, the star of the show. To Emily, he was more than that. He was a partner, a creature she believed she had forged a bond with. But Vesper's life had been one of loss and confinement. Born in captivity, he never knew the family bonds wild orcas rely on. His mother died when he was only a calf, leaving him to grow up in steel tanks without the structure of a pod. Trainers described him as unpredictable. Some days he was calm, other days distant or aggressive. He slapped his tail against the water, charged at underwater gates, and refused commands. Emily noticed it more than anyone. She filed reports, spoke up in meetings, and urged management to reconsider using him in live performances, but her warnings were brushed aside. The summer shows were sold out, and Ocean World couldn't afford to pull their star orca from the schedule. Management dismissed his aggression as lack of stimulation. Behind closed doors, the calculation was simple. The show must go on. The money must pour in. It's easy to forget when you sit in a stadium seat, but orcas are apex predators. In the wild, they travel up to 100 miles a day, communicating, hunting, and raising calves. But Vesper? Trapped in a tank no bigger than a hotel swimming pool, cut off from family, surrounded by walls and noise, day after day for decades. If you or I were put in that situation, how long would it take before frustration boiled over into rage? That was Vesper's life. And on June 5th, 2021, unfortunately, it finally exploded. That afternoon, the stadium was packed. More than 2,500 people filled the bleachers, families with children clutching popcorn, tourists with cameras ready, older couples who'd come for nostalgia. The sun was out, the music loud, the announcer building excitement. When Emily stepped onto the platform, she carried the confidence of someone who had done this nearly 300 times. She dove in, sleek and fearless, as Vesper rose from the water on cue. Gasps and applause echoed as they performed together, trainer and Orca moving in synchronized arcs. To the audience, it was magic. To Emily, it was trust. But halfway through the finale, something shifted. Vesper missed a cue, circling wide instead of rising. Trainers on the sidelines stiffened. Emily swam closer, raising her arm for the next signal. And then, without warning, Vesper surged forward, jaws closing around her waist. The crowd's applause turned instantly to screams. Children cried out. Parents pulled their kids close. Vesper dragged Emily beneath the water with terrifying force, thrashing her body like a rag doll. What followed was 29 minutes of horror. Blood-curdling screams of Emily and water turning murky. With Emily's blood, trainers rushed to distract him, banging gates, throwing food, and waving signals. Nothing worked. Each time Emily surfaced, gasping, he yanked her under again. Parents covered their children's eyes, but the screams filled the stadium. Some spectators filmed, their hands trembling. For nearly half an hour, the struggle continued, until Emily's body finally went limp. By the time it was pulled from the water, she was gone. The autopsy confirmed the brutality. Multiple blunt force injuries, torn tissue, and drowning. A violent end inflicted by a creature she had spent years caring for. For Emily's family, the loss was devastating. Her mother, who had once warned her not to go too deep, now faced the unbearable truth that the very waters her daughter loved had taken her forever. In the days after, Oceanworld moved quickly to control the narrative. A press release called it a tragic accident, careful not to use the word attack. Internally, staff were instructed not to speak to the media. Behavior reports on Vesper vanished from records. Rumors circulated that Emily had been careless, that she wasn't paying attention, that maybe she was under the influence of something. It was a calculated smear, a way to shift blame onto a young woman who could no longer defend herself, rather than admit the truth. The park had ignored every warning, but this wasn't an isolated incident. Emily's death echoed other tragedies. In 1991, a young student named Keltie Byrne slipped into a pool at Seaworld and was dragged under by 3 orcas while horrified visitors watched. In 2010, experienced trainer Dawn Bronchot was killed at Seaworld by Tillicum, another orca held in captivity for decades. The pattern was undeniable. Human lives lost, orcas pushed to psychological breaking points, and parks scrambling to protect their reputation instead of their people. Public outrage spread quickly, sparking debates, protests, and calls for an end to orca captivity. Animal rights groups amplified Emily's story, pointing out that no matter how skilled or passionate a trainer might be, no bond can erase the instincts of a 6-ton predator confined to a tank. For months, Oceanworld faced falling attendance and angry demonstrations at its gates. But the park never closed. The show scaled back briefly after Emily's tragedy, but soon returned once the incident began to fade from memory. Vesper was removed from the spotlight, transferred in secrecy. Some say he was euthanized, others believe he lives in isolation somewhere far from public view. But let's be real here. Why would a corporation keep an orca without making money from it? No one would maintain such a massive animal and pay for its care when it brings them nothing in return. Emily Cadeaux's life ended at 24, in the water she loved more than anything. To her, the ocean was freedom. To the corporation she worked for, it was profit. And in that collision of passion and greed, a young woman lost her future, her family lost their daughter, and the world was reminded that wild predators can never truly be tamed. The park still stands. The shows still run. Tourists still file in, tickets in hand, children tugging at their parents' sleeves with excitement. But the danger hasn't vanished. As long as living, breathing predators are trapped in tanks for entertainment, the risk of tragedy will remain. Emily is gone. Her smile, her laughter, her dreams of swimming like a mermaid beneath the waves, all of it silenced